That way everyone knows that it is a public recording. All right. As I said, please stay muted. Our guest speaker will indicate when questions can be asked. She has 2 sections that she's going to go over, giving you guys ample time. During the question and answering, when she indicates that, because there's a room full of us and we're on multiple screens, the best way for me as a host to see you is at the very bottom. If you hover over the icons, there's emotions. There's a raise hand emotions. If you click on that, it pops up to my screen and then I can call on you. And the last thing is, and you guys know this, definitely ask your questions and step up to speak, but also step back to let others speak as well. So really quickly, take your time to check us out, but we are a 501c3 nonpartisan nonprofit charity. Our mission is really to educate, engage, and empower, and that's what we're doing tonight. As part of that, about me, you can read about me in the Who We Are section of our website, elec.nj.gov. The big project we're doing this year, and some of our volunteers are here tonight on this Zoom, we have a huge effort with civics education. We created the New Jersey Civics Handbook, and it was mailed to 17-year-olds who will vote for the first time in this November and who live in the bottom 291 most vulnerable zip codes in New Jersey. That ranking factors in 20 metrics, including educational attainment, race, ethnicity, income level, etc. So we're very proud of that work at Action Together New Jersey Education Fund. So the need has been clear to us. How do we recruit, train, and support Board of Education candidates? And we've come up with a solution, and that's njboe.info. As you can see here, we have the ability, you have the ability to sign up for alerts, but every month there is a training. The first month was legal and political matters. If you haven't seen that, do check that out. The second one, we had actual BOE members talk about the roles and responsibilities. And this month is elec. And I should say, for those of you watching this on recording, the information that Ms. Hopkins is going to give us is accurate as of today's date. There is active laws, because we have an active legislative session right now. Should it change, what I will do is on the YouTube where this video will reside, I will put in notes if there's any changes in that. For example, the financial component of it. So I will definitely do that. We are not able to do this without our monthly donors. So I want to thank our monthly donors for sustaining us. And if this is of value to you, I would love for you to become a monthly sustainer for us at atnjef.org/donate. Asking $10 a month. If you could do more, great, but just buy us a couple cups of coffee. That would be awesome. All right, our goal for tonight is to learn the legal compliance requirements, whether you're a candidate for the Board of Education or you're a volunteer supporting a candidate for the Board of Education. In our series of training, we have used various resources from the New Jersey School Boards Association. And this is too small for you guys to read, and it's not for you to read, but we're really going to cover some of the areas here that I have encircled that has to do with tonight, including the reporting of expenditures, campaign materials. So you will hear that, but please note that this webinar does not replicate or supplant board training provided by the NJSBA. In fact, we're not associated with NJSBA. They're a great organization though. We are an independent nonprofit, not associated with any political party either. And this webinar and our work with school boards is completely nonpartisan. With that, I know I went a little fast because I want to get to the guts of it. I know you do too. I have to tell you about our wonderful guest speaker today. Her name is, correct me if I'm saying this incorrectly, Maita Hopkins. So there's a lot here, but I hope you guys get a chance to check her out. She's kind of amazing. So since 2005, she's been a compliance officer at the New Jersey Election Law Enforcement Commission, or we call it ELEC for short. She basically, well, a lot of things, but one of the things that she does is to educate and assist on campaign finance regulations and filing requirements. She's bilingual, so she also helps Spanish speakers. And Maita is so impressive. She is a scholar athlete back in her day at Rutgers University with a degree in poli-sci. And while at Rutgers, she was on the rowing team that went to the NCAA championship. She was named first team All-American twice. She's inducted in the Rutgers Athletic Hall of Fame. After college, she was a member of the United States rowing team and won multiple national championships, a world champion gold medal, and was even an alternate on the US Olympic team in 2004. I mean, this is amazing, right? I'm so thrilled. Additionally, while she's also working at ELEC, she also serves on the Rutgers University Athletic Hall of Fame Committee. She's the coach of her son's soccer team and a volunteer with her daughter's Girl Scout troops. And you guys, Girl Scout cookies are out, so hopefully you guys grab a couple. She currently lives in West Windsor with her husband, 2 children, dog, and guinea pig. So with that, I know that there are questions. We have some questions, and Ms. Hopkins will go through it during her presentation. But at this time, I'd like to introduce to you Ms. Maita Hopkins. And Maita, you can take it away.
Hi, everybody. I just want to go over a couple of things before I get started. What I'm going over is not a compliance training for being a treasurer that's certified. So if you want to get a certification as a treasurer, you would need to either complete the test that we have available on our website, attend one of the webinars, which I most probably would be conducting, or you can come in person to our office in Trenton, New Jersey. It's great to be here and to see so many of you. I know everybody's time is very valuable. I cut out of coaching a little bit early this evening, but I look forward to answering the questions that you have. I want to go over everything pretty quickly. Ask questions. I don't want a lot of questions while I'm going over it because it's a limited amount of time and there's a lot of information as it pertains to school board candidates. So if let me see if I can share my screen. Let's see here. Okay. Okay. Do you see my screen now?
No, we do not. So you have to click on whichever screen you want to share, if not your desktop.
Let's see here. I thought I did this first screen. Give me a second.
No worries. No worries at all. We appreciate you being here with us.
Okay, so this is one of those where it tells me that it doesn't want to allow me to see it.
It does not want you to allow to see it?
With the Mac, a lot of times it has all these things that don't allow you to share your screen. Let me see here.
Oh, you know what? You might have to go to settings and close out and then share, give permission.
Yeah, I'm in the security preferences.
Folks who are watching, the other thing too is Maita is using ELEC's screen, right? Am I saying that right?
I'm going to be using a PowerPoint that we have at our agency that's modified for this. I'm not in, I have it set up separately just for this session, okay. But let me just double check here. I apologize for this.
No worries. If you want to email me the PowerPoint, we can just do some quick Q&A while I bring that up. That works too.
Okay, give me a second. Really thought I was able to show that. I'm not sure if I have to get out of Zoom again and then come back in order for it to take it.
I think so. So why
Okay.
don't you hang up and then log back in and then we'll start it again? Will that work?
Yeah,
All
I'll
right.
hang up and then I will come right back. Okay.
You got it. You got it. No worries. Okay, you're gonna log off, right?
Yes.
Okay. So you guys, thank you so much for being patient. John Shaw has put in a question in the chat. So if you guys want to pop in your questions, go ahead and put it in right now. That's top of mind, and we'll make sure that it's answered. One thing that I should note is in preparing for this, Ms. Hopkins and I had a couple of conversations. ELEC actually does not work on email or written communications. So we're going to try to use her time to get her to answer. So how you would actually get answers from ELEC is actually by calling them, which is what I had to do. I had to call them and wait for a return call a couple of times to get her to speak. They do not operate on email at all. And I don't know what statute or law, or that's just the way they handle things. So be sure to, that's great. Be sure to put your questions in the chat, and I want to make sure I know where we are here on the chat. So I want to make sure that, you know, she gets to answer it. So I appreciate all the patience that you guys have. Doesn't she sound amazing though? I mean, I looked at her bio and I was like, who we've got like a star person here. So I'm very excited. She actually left her son's soccer game, which she coaches, in order to do this. So I'm very appreciative of her time. And I apologize for the technology issue that she's having here. All right. So what I had alluded to earlier when I said was that what she is presenting is based on law that's current as of today. So I don't know if you guys know, but there is a bill that's being advanced through, it went through the Senate, voted on, and came out of the Senate. That's the state legislature. And right now it's going to be up for the assembly, and that's the Election Transparency Act. So I'm not going to make any type of, as a C3, we're not going to advocate about it, you know, either or, but I think that is one thing that we want to be aware of, because that's going to make changes in the monetary amount on when you have to file and what kind of filings that you have to do. So that's gonna, you know, that's what's gonna happen there. So you should be aware of that. And as soon as we have anything about that, I will let you all know. But again, as a C3, we're not advocating either way what we want to do with it. Okay, so I've got some questions here. Okay, starting with John, who determines if a school board race is partisan or not? If nonpartisan, how is ballot placement determined? Okay, so the ethics say that it should be nonpartisan, but as we covered under the legal and political matters, there's actually nothing in the statute that as of January that says it has to. And in fact, our attorney who spoke said you can actually get endorsements, which was surprising to me. But we as a 501c3 really advocate for keeping partisan politics out of school boards altogether. We just don't need the rhetoric. And so that's what we're advocating for. And if nonpartisan, how is ballot placement determined? So our research team who worked on the April one contacted the school boards, and based on that, it is really a ballot drawing for the April elections. It was with the board secretaries, and they drew the name, and then that was given to the county clerks, and that's how the ballot placement was determined. So Deb, I see you have your hand up.
Hey, Wynn, I wanted
Hi.
to differentiate between endorsement and support of, we had a situation here in Monmouth County where the Republicans were clearly supporting a couple of our candidates for school board here in Freehold Township.
Mhm.
And is there a difference between endorsement and support? Do they differentiate? Because I'm shocked to hear that statute.
Yeah, there is a difference between endorsement and support. Usually endorsement, it comes from organizations or elected officials, and it comes with strings attached. You know, they'll want something for the endorsement. And for the endorsement, it depends on what they offer. You know, they may say, we'll do a mailer with you and our assembly candidates, or, you know, or municipal candidates, it's whatever. Support is like a broader thing. It could say that, you know, we'll provide you with voter list access, but it's not an outright endorsement per se. But yeah, but we've seen both of those scenarios come into the Board of Education races. So, Cookie, you have your hand up. Did you want to add something to that?
Yeah, Miss Hopkins is back, so I didn't want to use too much of her time, but I just
Oh,
wanted
thank you. I
to,
didn't see that. Okay.
she's here.
Oh, thank you so much for the heads up.
But I would quickly, in terms of how position in the ballot is determined in Somerset County for November elections, the county clerk does a ballot drawing, which is live. You can watch it in the county office or online, and they draw your names and then put you on whatever column you're going to be. That's at least for Somerset County.
Wonderful, thank you. And Cookie was one of our speakers in last month's webinar. She is a serving Board of Education member in Somerset County. So thank you so much for that, Cookie. And thank you for letting me know that our guest speaker is back in. Maita, I apologize, I did not see your name pop up. So welcome back. And I've made you co-host. Try again to share your screen.
So I wasn't able to figure out how to get that down because it's blacked out for me. I don't know if it's because it's a second login, but I did email you the PowerPoint. If you could share that on your screen, and then I can go through that way.
That sounds good. Let me update it, and I've got it. It's okay.
I love the security of a Mac, but sometimes it's a pain.
Okay, verify your identity. Maita, are you able to see, while I'm doing this, are you able to see the chat and see the questions? I've answered the one from John Shaw. The next one up is Michael and Regan. Can you see that?
Let me see in here. I have to open up the chat again, so I'll take a look. No, because I guess I came in late, so I don't see that in the chat.
Okay. So the question is, if I filed with ELEC last year when I ran for BOE, do I have to do it when I run again this year?
And you said yes. Did you say yes?
I didn't answer. I'm waiting.
Oh, okay. So I don't know if you, is there any amount of, okay. So I know there are going to be a lot of questions. Would you run for school board? It's running like any other office position in the sense that you have contribution limits and expenses have to be used in a certain way. And whether you are receiving contributions from yourself, which you are considered a contributor if you're using your own funds, you would have reporting requirements if money is raised or spent. The only difference, which is a huge difference for school board candidates, is that if you raise and spend nothing and no one raises or spends anything on your behalf, that includes your own money, that includes your spouse's money, no one raises or spends anything on your behalf, then you don't have to file anything with the Election Law Enforcement Commission. Your name would be on the ballot, but we would not have you file any reports. With other candidates who are like council candidates or mayoral or county level or state level, they have to file regardless of whether they're raising or spending anything, but school board candidates do not. Spending your own money is spending money. So If you're going to do that, you can go on to the next slide. So you need to get a treasurer, and you can be your own treasurer if you're planning on having money raised and spent. The person has to be over 18. You can do it for yourself. And the only caveat is a chair of a political party committee cannot be the chair or treasurer of your campaign committee. You can go to the next one. So if that chair or treasurer is changing, just like any other candidate, you would have to notify us. When you designate a treasurer on a D1 form, we have a special section on our website that is for short forms for school board candidates. The majority of school board candidates, currently the expense limit is if they spend less than $5,800, you're only sending us short forms. The D1, which is a 2-pager you fill out on the website and send to us. All of our forms are required to be filed electronically. So you need to get a registration and PIN. It's on our website. When you click on candidates and committees, we have a step 1 and step 2, and you'll follow those protocols. You can go to the next one. You're going to set up a bank account. Banks require all sorts of things. It has to be a bank in New Jersey, and you're going to deposit funds into that account and spend it out of that account. If you want to spend your own money, that's fine. It has to go into the bank account and then established for the campaign separate from your personal funds. A lot of times school board candidates think that if they don't raise or spend anything, that the rules are not applicable. They are when it comes to money actually being spent. So just be aware of that when you are planning on spending funds, that you have to go to a bank and open the account and put the money into it. We have all this information. Everything I'm going over with you right now is in the compliance manual for candidates that you can find on our website. So make sure that you set up the account. You're going to file a D1 form for one candidate. If many of you get together or a couple get together that want to run together, you call it a ticket. I call it a joint candidate committee. That's when you're raising and spending funds together. If you're in a line together on the ballot, that doesn't make any difference when it comes to finances. If you're sharing finances, you file a D2, and then you'll be filing together for the remainder of the election cycle. You can go forward. So you need to name the campaign account. It's going to be your surname and office sought, or you can name it for the school district you're in, something like that. But make sure that whatever you name it, it's going to go on every paid for statement. So every sign you put out is going to say paid for by the name of that committee that you put on your bank account, the name on the reports, everything across the board is going to be the same. So for school board candidates, it's paid for by name and address of whoever pays for it. So if you don't pay for it, say someone who supports you and says, I will buy you campaign signs. I'm not going to give you any money. I'm going to buy you campaign signs. You need to find out how much they're spending. So you don't have to open a bank account if somebody else is buying the signs on your behalf, but you might have to report to us on a C1 form. It's a contributor's information form if it's over $300 currently. As Wynn had said in the beginning, there is legislation. It will be voted on tomorrow. And as she indicated, what I'm telling you is as of today. Depending upon whether the vote goes through tomorrow in the assembly, and if any modifications are made to the bill as it currently stands, things might change from what I'm telling you right now, okay? So make sure that you understand that this bank account is not your personal account, as in you can't put money in and take it out for whatever it is you want. There are rules that go along with it. So we can go on to the next one. As I said, it's going to be the types of names on there. We can go ahead. It's either the single account, single candidate committee, or it's going to be a joint candidate committee. When you set up that bank account, you have to file the D1 within 10 days of doing that. If it's a joint candidate committee, it's going to be a D2. And you can go ahead, establishing a reporting committee. So when you establish a committee, it can be just for yourself. So that's a single candidate committee. It can be for you and other people who are raising together and spending together, or you can have both. Doesn't usually happen with school board candidates. School board candidates tend to be either a single candidate committee or a joint candidate committee, but not both. You have the option to do both, But I will touch on this again briefly. You have to be cognizant that there is a contribution limit. What it currently is if somebody gives you $2,600 to your single account, they can give you nothing to a joint candidate committee because the contribution limits, which we have that chart on our website, you can only get a maximum of a certain amount of $2,600 from an individual total for an election for you. So if you're in a joint candidate committee, they can't give anything to that in addition to your single because you're in it as well. So you would get part of that money, which means you would be in excess. So you can go on to the next one. So when does reporting happen? Generally speaking, for school board candidates, and I'm saying generally, as soon as you start raising and spending funds, you're considered a candidate. Some people don't want to jump headfirst in and start raising and spending funds for the election that's happening right now. Let's say for the school board election that's coming up right now in April. There aren't many of them left in April in this state. Most of them are moving for cost-cutting purposes to November in the general election. But you can't say, I'm putting out some feelers, spending some money to try and see if there are, if there will be support for me. That testing the waters does not exist for the state of New Jersey. That might be a federal thing, but we don't, that does not apply to us. We have filing dates, but with school board candidates, if you don't raise or spend anything, you don't have to file something. And I mean for yourself or on your behalf by somebody else. Okay, you can move on. If you spend less than that $5,800, but you are spending money, you're doing that D1 and the C1 as needed on reporting dates. Again, that's over $300 from one source or any amount in cash. Most people stay away from cash because if somebody gives you $10 to your school board candidacy, you have to get their name and address, employer's name and address and occupation. And people who are handing you cash generally don't want to give you any information. At least when somebody gives you a check, it has a lot of information. You can track them down afterwards because you're required to get that from everybody. If there was ever an investigation in the future, you would have to provide every contributor's information. You only have to report it if it's cash or any amount up to $200 in cash, or if it's over $300 in checks or in kind, which means goods or services. If you spend over $5,800, which again is rare for school board candidates, you're going to be filing the D1 and the R1 on the filing dates. We have all the filing dates up on our website. I recommend taking a look at it sometime. You can go on. So when you go to joint candidates, the threshold goes up a bit to filing simple forms versus more complex. So 2 candidates, $11,000. And then the next slide will tell you that it's, which you can go to, is the $15,800 for 3 or more. It's 1, 2, and then 3 or more. That would be what you would need to use as a guiding point of what forms you're going to file with us.
Maita, just a quick question. So if you are running in a joint candidate, you can have 1 treasurer, right? So you 2 or 3 candidates can appoint 1 treasurer to do all the forms and the financials for this joint committee. Is that correct?
That's correct. And so a lot of times, if people are getting together, they pool their money and then they're going to buy signs and it'll be out of that 1 account. So they're getting contributions and it's going to be equally attributed to each person. So that, say I was in a single candidate committee, I could get $2,600 from an individual. That gets multiplied by 3 if I'm in a joint candidate committee. So if I'm not doing a single, if I'm only in a joint candidate committee with 2 other people, so there are 3 of us now, we can get 2,600 times 3. And they will be within that threshold because it is broken down by person. When it comes to reporting it though, it's over $300 from 1 source that gets reported. You can't cut it down. So somebody says, they gave a check for $900 to our joint candidate committee of 3 people. I don't have to report it because it's only $300 towards me. Unfortunately, that joint candidate committee is seen as an entity. So it's in excess of 300 to the committee that would get reported. So you can go on to the next one. So I believe I addressed some of the questions already in here, such as if you're buying lawn signs for your Board of Education campaign, do you have to file anything? Yes, because that's money. And you want to use your own money, you have to open that bank account, put it in there and pay for it out of that bank account. I recommend getting a bank account that allows you to have a card with it, because almost no one is going to allow you to pay for things with check, because most sign companies are online, from what I hear from the public. Yeah, you're not going to just call it a day if you're spending your own money. So unfortunately, you're not done with a petition. Yeah, so fundraising belongs in there. I think all those questions that I had gotten in there, I think are resolved in that. We can go on here. So termination of reporting. You file reports on the 29-day pre, 11-day pre, and 20-day post, unless you're somebody who's like, I'm not going to run for another 2 years. Then you would file quarterly reports until that time, and then you get into that election cycle. So you have to continue to file if you have money in that campaign and you're accepting more funds. You can only accept funds for the election that you're in, and that's considered a cycle. So if you have it multiple years out, your cycle is that multiple years out. It's not like PACs that have set up accounts. They are on an annual basis. Campaigns could be on many years if their cycle is, if they started collecting funds and spending funds a year before, you have to file every quarter. If somebody gave you $2,600 a max the very first time out, they can't give you anything else, even though you're a year or two away from your election. Doesn't usually happen with school board, but there's potential. So you have to understand that. So what are contributions? It's anything of value made to the candidate. It can be cash, it can be check, it can be money order, which we consider like a check, in kind, which is goods or services. So if you have a meet and greet and somebody provides all the food and drinks are an in-kind contribution to your campaign. If somebody is, and we'll go on to that in that in-kind contribution, but everything that you get has to be deposited into the bank account. If you have a treasurer that's not yourself, then the treasurer has to deal with that bank account. You have to keep a record of everything that you have. Currently is for 4 years that we ask you to maintain a record of every single dime that comes in and every single dime that goes out of that account. Okay, go on. So you can, so the cash, again, maxed out at $200. And again, a lot of people don't deal with that. But when you get money, it's when you receive that money, not the date that's written on the check. So if somebody's like, don't cash this for a few days, unfortunately, you got it that day, you'll report the date that you actually received that, either you or your treasurer, anyone who's associated with your campaign. When they get it is when you would put it as the date received. Okay, you can go on.
And then just really quick, in the previous slide, it has to be deposited within 10 days of receipt.
That's correct. Just because you didn't get to the bank right away doesn't mean that you didn't actually receive it. So that counter counts in there. So when you get a contribution, if it's on a check, you have, if it's on a joint checking account check, whoever signs it is the person who gave it to you. If both people sign it, then and there are no further instructions, then it's divided in half equally between the two people who are in that joint candidate or joint bank account, and you would report it accordingly. So, or keep a record of it accordingly. So if they gave you a check for $1,000 and they both signed it, you would report a contribution from the one person for $500 with their full name and address, employer's name and address and occupation, and then the other person separately, their name, their employer's name and address, their occupation and everything. So it's not one contribution from two people, it's two separate on that. If somebody sends you a check and they both sign it, but they send you a letter saying, hey, this check, I want $300 to go towards this person and $700 to go towards the other person, you would attribute it accordingly. You can't get contributions from an LLP, a partnership, or an LLC as an entity. It would, if they give you a check like that, it has to come with written instructions and signed off, and that is a contribution from a person. We do have contribution limits that we have addressed in the manual who it can come from. So the guidelines for that, you don't have to remember right now. You can always check out the manual and it breaks it down in detail. A sole proprietorship would be a contribution from a person, not the sole proprietorship. A corporation, labor organization is from that entity. If they're a continuing political committee, that is a different threshold. So you would have to acquire all this information. We're not able to tell you who you got a check from or how are you supposed to get it after the fact. Remember, when you're getting money for the campaign, that there are the responsibilities involved of obtaining all the information that you're required to by the regulations. So you can go on.
Can I just interject here? I know we have a lot of new people thinking about running for the Board of Ed for the first time, and this may seem overwhelming. I think the reason why we have Ms. Hopkins speak to us in March, like she said, there's very few April school board elections. Over 530 are taking place in November. So that's why we want to get ahead to inform you. So then when you start getting contributions, you can detail, so you don't have to go back, right? So we are being proactive with it. I don't want you guys to be scared or nervous. This is very easy bookkeeping type of information. So we will do training continuing on this to help you. But thank you so much for hanging in there.
Yeah, so I know it's a lot of information all at once. And the great thing about our agency is, and I'm sure you have our phone number if you're going to give that out later, which is the 609-292-8700. You call, a person answers, the receptionist will answer, and they will send you to a compliance officer. And the compliance officer answers the phone, and they will answer any questions that you might have. They will follow up if you have something that seems a little bit more out of the ordinary, but you get live people at our agency. It is not a pre-recording. You don't have to press 15 different buttons to try and reach a person. So I'm going over a lot of stuff, but if you feel a little overwhelmed, you can always call. I'm one of the compliance officers, so I can answer questions. And we have a website that we're constantly updating with information, and I think it's pretty helpful, and we're always trying to make it more user-friendly. So feel free to contact us after the fact. So what I was talking about with in-kind, a lot of the questions before this session had started was about what is considered a contribution. Can somebody just go and write note cards for me and I don't have to do anything about it? If somebody is spending money for you and you are receiving that value, that's essentially an in-kind contribution. If it is someone who is a photographer who's doing this on their own and they're taking some pictures and giving it to you, that's not an in-kind contribution. If, however, as part of their business, during their business hours, they're using all this software, they would normally charge a ton of money to anybody else, you would have to get the fair market value of that. So there is, again, a manual on our website that gives you an exact scenario that you can follow and get a better handle on in-kind contributions. Again, the next slide, personal funds are contributions. You can spend as much as you want to on your campaign. You can make it as a loan, but you can't profit off of this, so you can't charge your campaign interest. You can forgive a loan if you don't raise enough funds to pay yourself back. But if you do not report it as a loan, if it's over $300 that you're submitting to us on a C1 or the R1, depending upon your spending threshold there, if you report it as just a straight contribution and you have money left over in your campaign, you can't just pay yourself back because you can't recharacterize something after the fact. So loans are reported as a loan as the time when it's received. You're going to continue to report it as an outstanding obligation on an R1 form if you are spending over that $5,800 threshold, which is as it stands today. Tomorrow is a different day. We'll see what happens with the legislation. If it's the bank, it's essentially you getting the loan. It's from you. It's subject to the contribution limits. So contribution reporting. It's the date that you got the contribution, the amount, the total that you've received from each contributor. You get their name, mailing address, occupation, employer's name, and employer's address, and then it'll go on a C1 or an R1. You can go on. 48-hour contribution reporting. If you are lucky enough to have someone give you over $1,900, currently 13 days before the date of the election, up to the date of the election, you'll report it on a C1 within 48 hours. All of our forms are electronic, so you'll have to get a reg and pin for your electronic signature. It's a quick, easy process. You send that form through the website. We email back the registration and PIN to you, usually within a couple hours because a person reviews your application, and then you file all the forms online. It's very quick and easy.
And just a bit on this one, why it's necessary is we as citizens want to know who's influencing elections, right? And so this allows us to know who's contributing, and it's part of the transparency that we appreciate in the process.
That is a very good point that you brought up. We are not an agency that's here to penalize people every 5 seconds, to make your life more difficult. We are here to help people in the sense that you want to know who's putting all these signs all over the place. Where is this money coming from? Things have just popped up. People are sending letters out saying things here and there. Where is it coming from? We are an agency that was created to help the public understand who is running for office and where everything's coming from. So there are some prohibited contributors, but you should contact us if you want more information about that. Banks, insurance corporations, public utilities, cable television, casino interests, foreign nationals. Foreign nationals is governed by the FEC. They have a great piece on their website. We don't have jurisdiction over that, so we can't really answer any questions about foreign nationals and who is considered that or what is considered that. So with the other items, that is dictated by the Attorney General's office, and they have more information there. With the pay-to-play laws, certain businesses can't make contributions if they didn't have fair and open contracts, but more information on that we have on our website. So I recommend looking at that. You can't accept money from people you don't know. So if you go to a restaurant, and I've heard this scenario a lot, people are very generous apparently at restaurants. A candidate goes to pay and the server says, you know what? This person who was in our restaurant who wanted to remain nameless wanted to give you $200. So here's the $200 from that person. Unfortunately, you can't keep that money, but you can deposit it into your bank account and write a nice check to the Department of Treasury, State of New Jersey, because that's who gets the money. You're not permitted to keep anonymous contribution. The state of New Jersey, I'm sure the administration will love the extra funds. So if you know someone who's going to is someone who's handing you money right away and they won't give you any information, say, no, thank you, I cannot accept that. So that's the best way to deal with that. We have contribution limit chart on our website under the candidates and committees tab, and it's a great thing to take a look at because you might have organizations that are continuing political committees that want to give to you, and you can take a look at the amounts in there. So if somebody gives you over the amount, which doesn't generally happen, we have steps that are outlined in our manual. Within 48 hours, you have to give the extra back to that person. So make sure that you keep that written record, the date you got it, the person who contributed, what their information is, and then you have to also get that photocopy of the check and the amount that you photocopied that you gave back to the person that was in excess, because you can't keep money that's over the limit amount.
And again, the over limited amount is monetary and in kind
Correct.
combined. Yep.
Yeah. So it's the fair market value when it comes to in kind. If say you go to get signs and people are like, I really support you, I think you're fantastic. Oh, that price up there that says it's $500 for you, $200. Well, that extra $300 is a contribution. So you're going to have to keep a record of the fact that that person just gave you a contribution of $300, which was in kind, because it's something that would be fair market for everybody else. So again, I went over this before, the equal attribution of what comes into a joint candidate committee gets divided over everybody. So expenditures, it's everything that you do for the election. You can spend as much as you want, but you can only spend it within certain limits, in the sense that you can't use it to go get your hair done. You can't use it to pay for your child's college education. You can't pay for, this is one which people do not like, but you see someone who is hungry, and you have campaign funds, or people who need coats. You can't go to the store and buy 15 coats for people who need coats, because your campaign fund is not your personal charity. There are charity organizations that exist out there, but the campaign is not one of them. You can make a contribution to a charity that is registered as a 501c. That is permissible. But you can't give it to your cousin who knows somebody who can really help somebody. That is not permitted, because that is not a registered 501c. But we have the permissible uses here, the campaign expenses, donation to a 501c charity. You can contribute to other candidates or committees, the payment of overhead expenses, repayment of contributors. So if at the end you have money left over, you want to give money back to the contributors that gave to you, you can. If you win office, you can have this campaign account for ordinary and necessary office holding expenses, but it can't cover the cost of something that's already being paid for by your office. It goes into further detail in the manual. So expenditure reporting, you'll file it on an R1 if you go over the spending threshold. If you don't, ignore that bottom bullet point. I forgot to remove that one. If you don't go over the 5,800 in expenses as a single candidate, or if you're in a joint candidate committee over that spending threshold, you don't have to file an expense report to us, like all your expenditure information, but you do need to maintain it, so that if we ever requested it, if there was ever any investigation, you'd have to provide it to us. But you need to know where everything is going. If you end up going over 5,800 and you have get out the vote workers out there, you need to get the name of every single person, their address, and the purpose would be get out the vote, and you have to pay them with a check. You can't hand cash out. Go ahead. So 48-hour expenditure, this would only apply if you're spending over $1,900 on someone else's campaign in a different election. Not typical with school board candidates. I don't think I've ever seen it. It's not typical for most candidates. So you can take a look at it in our manual. Credit card, if it's in the name of the committee, it's an expense. You'll just put it as an electronic transfer of funds, or that you're going to note the name of the lending institution, and it's kind of a sub-payee in there wherever you use that credit card. So you can't just say credit card expense if you're going over the R1 threshold. You don't report those expenses on an E1 on our website because that's just for 48-hour notices. There's a petty cash fund you can set up for incidental purposes. So say you get $100 out of the campaign account and you're going to buy a book of stamps. You still need to keep a record of everything and all the receipts of everything, but that's the only thing that you can pay in cash is for like something that costs a couple bucks. Go on. Street money is when you're paying for get out the vote workers. As I said, it has to be paid by check. If you're filing the R1, don't give us social security numbers. We don't want it. Everything that you report to us goes on our website. Legal fees are something that's directly related to the campaign. Say you have a tie in an election that would, if you have an election contest, you can deal with it in that way. Impermissible uses, as I said before, you can't pay your mortgage with it. You can't buy a car with your campaign funds. You can't buy clothes. I think that's one that people really have a hard time grappling with because you want to dress nicely for like a photo shoot. Unfortunately, you can't buy a new outfit for the photo shoot with those funds. You can't pay for a tuition unless there's a specific example that you are working on getting a certificate for something that is directly related to your office. So it's not for you to get a master's now that you are running for office. It doesn't go across the board. You can't pay for dues to a fitness club, and you can't pay yourself to be a candidate. So labeling is the biggest thing for school board candidates. People put up signs and they don't say who paid for it. It's very simple. Just put paid for by the name and address of whoever pays for it. That's the biggest complaint that we receive at our review and investigation staff, and it goes through our legal staff. Biggest complaint. Put it on anything that fits. We have an exemption for de minimis value, but I would have to say people will complain about everything, and just to keep everyone at bay, just put it out there what it is. If you do a robocall, then or people are calling out and saying, vote for this person, blah, 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 you have to say who paid for that. So whoever's paying for all that phone time.
Maita, quick question related to this. I think it's very apropos. Diana has asked, when you're using a name for your candidacy, can you use a name previously used, or do you need to have a difference, and how does that work?
Say I ran for office last year. I used my surname and office sought, so Hopkins for school board. And I won, but it was a one-year term, so I have to run again this time because I was just filling a slot. I can still be Hopkins for school board this year. You can continue to use that name forever if you'd like to. And you can use the same bank account. You don't have to necessarily close it out. If you're going to run again, you can use your same account and redesignate it. So file a new D1 for your future election, but you can't collect for multiple elections at the same time. It's one at a time.
And I just want to reiterate on this. This includes postcards as well. So if you're doing postcards to help a candidate, you have to have this paid for by campaign legal language, okay? I know we have a lot of passionate volunteers who want to just dig in and help, but I want you guys to make sure that you follow campaign election communications laws.
Yeah, so you have to keep a record of everything as it stands right now for 4 years after the date of the election or the last transaction that occurred, whichever one is longer. Keep records of everything. You need to have your receipts, your bank, and your credit card statements. At the end of the day, if we're going to do some sort of investigation, we will ask you for everything and you're required to provide that. And reports are due by 5 p.m. on the filing due date. Everything is filed electronically with our agency. But don't wait until 5 o'clock to file it, because then you will go TikTok. It's on to the next day because everybody waited till a minute. If you know that you're completed with all your reporting, you can submit it to us. and it has to be done electronically. You cannot send us letters in the mail there. We don't even have a fax anymore. So if you run into any issues, we can always help you out with filing. I've tested it out on my cell phone. I've submitted reports when I was on vacation in another continent, on the beach. So this works around the world. I was in a different time zone and it worked. So I just want to let you know that first and foremost, we are an agency that likes to help people who are running for office and the public as well. If you have any questions about people who are running, or you're interested in it and you want to go through a thorough compliance training, you can always join one that's in a webinar. It's during the day, or you can do the test online, or you can come to our office. We do also do things like this. Generally, we don't have people who go in the evening, but we do have some sessions. If you have a group of people who are at least 10 or more, we will gladly do one online for your group. We will gladly appear in person at different parts of the state. I've gone down to Atlantic City, up to Morris County. We do it over at the beach in Ocean County. So contact our agency. We're very open to discussing anything with anyone. If you found that you made a mistake, we are not going to penalize you in compliance. We are not here to penalize people for working to run for office and improve our state.
Thank you so much, Maita. Do you have time for just a couple more quick questions? I know we're up on 8 o'clock, but we so appreciate your time. No, this is so wonderful. Everyone, right? Thumbs up. I mean, this has been so amazing. Listen, I don't want you to feel overwhelmed. The crux of all this is really to reveal who is, like Maita said earlier, who's paying for all these lawn signs all across our town, right? We want to know that. And so we want to make sure that you guys stay abreast of all these campaign election laws. So the questions that we have are, if you could answer this for us, what do you do with any money left over after the campaign?
So the permissible uses of the campaign funds applies during and after. So any part of that cycle, if you still have money left over and you are over the spending threshold of $5,800, you'll continue to file an R1 on a quarterly basis, and you use it within the uses. So you can give it to a charity, you can repay any loans, pro rata repayment to other people who have given to your campaign. You can rededicate it for a future election if you're planning on running again. A lot of times school board candidates run year after year, so you can use it for that future election. The reporting side is dependent upon how much you've actually spent, which would require either a quarterly reporting with the R1, or you'll maintain it and file C1s if you receive contributions.
So let's say you just want to terminate after this election and you don't want to run again and you have $500 left. What do you do?
So if you have $500 left, you can give it to a charity that is great, like AT&J. You can.
Well, thank you.
There you go. Or you could give it to another candidate who's running for office, or any candidate. It doesn't necessarily have to be a school board candidate. You can give it to someone who's running for council, mayor, state senate, state legislature, within the permissible uses. And it's a greater amount giving to another candidate or committee. You can, just because you're nonpartisan as a school board candidate, it doesn't mean that you can't give it to a party if you want to. So the funds would have to be expended that way. If you have money left over from all your contributions, the one thing you cannot do is give yourself the money and go out to dinner with your friends in a movie. That is what you cannot do. I've been asked, so it's not.
I'm sure you've been asked a lot of questions.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, I want to call on Deb, who has her hand up. Go ahead, Deb. Go ahead and unmute.
Nope, that's my mistake.
This is kind of sort of a stupid question, but I was a treasurer of a campaign years ago, and I had to do the reports and everything, which, by the way, to me are a pain in the you know what. But anyway, I couldn't get my expenditures to match my contributions. You know, like at the end, how you're supposed to, like, say, for example, your contributions are like $6,000. Should your expenditures for that quarter match that number that's coming in? Because I forget what it exactly was, but I was off by a penny and I couldn't find the stupid penny. So is that going to make a big deal with ELEC if we can't, like,
Find the
make
penny.
it even? Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Yes, I definitely do. And I get this question a lot. With regards to reporting and what you're required to maintain for contributions and expenditures, and it sounds like were you with a campaign that wasn't a school board campaign?
Yeah.
So money tends to be greater when it comes out of a different type of campaign, whether it's council, county commissioner, county executive, so on and so forth. We do require that you have records that of every cent that comes in, every cent that goes out.
I did.
And you would have to provide that to us. Are we in an agency that penalizes every single infraction? I know this is being recorded, but you can always take a look at our website for the complaints and final decisions. I do not believe you will find on our website that we penalize anybody for a penny, or even like a few cents of being off, because there are fees that are associated with the bank and going back and forth with your bank records to try and figure out what happened on a report is difficult. When it comes to electronic filing, the great thing about that is that the computer does all the math for you. And whether it's a short form on the C1 with the contributions, it adds up every single one that you've entered in there. And in the R1, which is the money going in and out for over 5,800, it matches that. It adds everything up and puts it in the correct schedules. When it was on paper, and I've been at the Election Law Enforcement Commission since 2005. So I've seen a lot of the changes happen in this agency. It was a lot easier for mistakes to be made when it came to tabulating things. Electronic filing does eliminate a lot of that. But again, we are an agency that works very well with the majority of candidates out there. If you made $1,000 disappear, that would be more significant. So we do have complaints and final decisions on our website. If you're curious to see who it is that we have penalized in the past, you can review what it is that has happened with our agency and the public.
So I
Yay
just
for electronic filing. I hated doing it by paper.
thank you, Deb. So I just want to jump in really quick and say that because this is for Board of Education candidates, you're not going to run into these big issues. We're talking small amounts, but again, regardless, when you're taking any contributions, then this is why we have it in March. We are way ahead of the game here. So that's why record keeping, and you guys all hold a personal checkbook and a household budget, right? Money comes in, money goes out, expenses, your groceries or whatever. It's basically basic reconciling of your checkbook back in the day when we had checkbooks, right? And that's really all it is. And we want to make sure that you get everything recorded in advance so that there's not a lot of digging that you have to do, right? So everyone who's giving you, and one of the questions are the contributions in kind or monetary cumulative? Yes, they are. So if your neighbor gives you $10 today and $100 tomorrow, that's $110. And when they meet that threshold, you have to report it. And so that's why every contribution that comes in, you want to keep a record of. And along with Deb's question, here's another question that's kind of related to that. Fran asks, is this process policed? Meaning, are all candidates really reporting? We hear the expression dark money. Are those monies being reported?
So I feel like that's a catchphrase these days when we talk about dark money. what a lot of that is with the independent expenditures or with these, there was a case at the federal level which set precedent, and all the states essentially have to follow what happened at the federal level, where contributors can give to these independent expenditure only committees in New Jersey. Again, we're different from the federal government, but they cannot give contributions to candidates or committees, these independent expenditure only committees. And that's why they don't have a lot of the same disclosure as regular continuing political committees or candidates. Yes, people are required to report. And what we as an agency receive all the time are calls regarding what I had said before. There are signs all over town and it says it's supporting this candidate, and I see nothing with regards to anything being filed for either the candidate. It doesn't say who's on there. We will look into that. We have assessed penalties for that. We don't let people, yes, we require people to file and not everybody does, but we do pursue the people who do not disclose what it is that they are doing with their reports, especially when there are large funds that are being moved back and forth and used inappropriately.
Maita, related to that, a question is, do you have to put the paid for by information for text blasts?
Yes. So these are, a text blast is usually somebody's paid to get all, so there are a few different things in here. When you get a list of voters, either way, you have to pay either at the municipal or the county or whichever clerk's office, they give you a list of registered voters. You pay for that list. That's an expense. If you, so that goes towards your expenditure side. For the paid for statement, if you were to put something out there, we recommend putting it on anything that has value on it. If you are sending out text to everybody, generally you're using a program. It's not someone who's typing a text. Hey guys, hey, my little group of friends, you should really vote this way, or I really support this candidate. It's generally a huge thing. You contact a company, you give them a list, and you pay them to put this out there. So who paid for that? You put the paid for by and whoever it is at the bottom of it. People ask, do I have to put it on a Facebook ad or Facebook ads? Yes, on Facebook ads. I wrote on my own Facebook page that I'm running for office. Do I have to put it on there? Not technically, because it's free and it doesn't cost anything. We recommend you put it on anything that you have open to the entire public, because the public gets annoyed when they see something or get something that they did not request. That is the biggest thing that we receive with regards to complaints. Somebody put this in my door. Somebody put this in my car in the school parking lot. Somebody put it, and it doesn't say who paid for this. I get that call every year. I got a flyer and I know this was on thick paper and it's shiny and this is expensive. So people are concerned with how money is being spent on elections, especially with school board candidates. There's a lot that's involved with school board associations, and I would say social media helps that out, because, and the movement of the school board election to the general election very much polarizes a school board election. Yes, it saves funds, but you start to see more money in campaigns. So don't be surprised when these school board candidates are getting more funds or people are trying to support you more, because they're already in this election cycle and they're trying to help out everybody. A lot of times before, people didn't even know there was a school board election in April. Mm-hmm. So it has changed. It has changed with that movement to the general election. That's why we see a lot more funds going into the school board campaigns. So be aware of that. Be aware of not just what you have to do, but if you see something happening and you know that someone is not reporting things, or you think they've gone above and beyond, or that some other entities are spending a lot of money and nothing is being reported, you can always contact our agency. The request for an investigation is a form on our website under the legal resources. It is confidential. not anonymous, but confidential. You can request an investigation. Your name will not be put out in the public. That is not something we will disclose to anyone. If you submit that request for an investigation, don't call us and say, hey, I submitted a request. How's it going? Because it is confidential. We don't know if you are the one who's actually calling about your own. So we'll say, we can't say if we have one or not. Can't tell you, don't know. So just be aware you have a voice in the state of New Jersey. If you see something that's being done, you can always request and we will look into it. But also on the other end, if you don't know what to do or how to spend the funds, or now that it's over, what do you do? Call us, because it's a lot of information and our website is there and we try to make it very helpful. But if it's your first time out, it's going to seem like it's very complicated.
And so just 2 quick questions and then we're going to let you go. That'll be the full hour. The first one is, do candidates typically get a PO box so that the paid for address is not their home address? Is that okay to do?
That's fine. You just have to remember to use the same address that you use across the board. So if you are getting a PO box, that means that you've set up a bank account and you've submitted that D1 form, because the money is going to be coming out of that. The D1 form, it asks for the name and address of the candidate, and then the candidate at the bottom and the treasurer at the bottom. Use the address consistently and make sure that it appears on everything consistently as well.
Wonderful. And the last thing is regarding, we bundle in-kind contribution, the fair market value plus monetary contributions. So if you have someone who contributed and they exceed the limit, do you have to return the contributions?
The amount that is excessive, that's correct. So I had gone over that really briefly when it came to if there's excessive, you need to write down, document the whole contribution, and then you're going to photocopy, write a check for the amount that's excessive that you're sending back to that person, photocopy that check and make sure you keep it in your records. We do have that addressed in the manual, so you can reference that. You don't have to write down notes really quickly, but it is written step by step with what you do with something that is excessive. Any other ones?
I think that's it. So if you guys want to stay after, I'd love to get your feedback and any other questions you may have. We may have Ms. Hopkins back later in the summer, if that's possible, if there's a need. But Maita, you've spent so much time with us and we're so grateful for the time that you spent. I know that it meant taking away from your own personal life, and we so appreciate it. So thank you so much. We learned so much tonight. I just have one request. Is it possible for us to get a copy of your PowerPoint? Is that allowed?
Yeah, so the PowerPoint that I gave to you, that I emailed to you, you can give that to the people who want to use it. I believe that's in that is in the correct format that you guys can use.
Wonderful.
Again, what I've gone over with everybody here is as it relates to school board candidates. There's the one part in there, I think I still had a bullet point that said an A1, so ignore the A1 because that doesn't apply to school board. We do have these sessions for treasurers or candidates that want to run for something other than school board. I know this is just for school board, but people sometimes when they start in school board tend to move on to other offices within either their district, county, state, on and up. We give the PowerPoint also for that, which is a different one that contains more information than for just school board. So yes, you can share that PowerPoint.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So with that, we will bid you good night, Maita. Thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it.
You're welcome. All right,
All right.
I'm going to leave now. Thank you so much.
Bye, Maita.
Bye.
So I'm going to stop recording and